Hi, Dan Edmondson here with another tip of the week. This week, what I want to talk about is a misconception I see in understanding the way light behaves that is, it can be very problematic for a lot of artists. And if you're trying to stylize your paintings, of course, you can do anything you want, right? But if you're trying to have some sort of an accurate representation of reality, then you have, you want your art to be follow the way that things actually behave in life. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is this misconception of warm light, cool shadows, cool light, warm shadows. That's a real common phrase that you hear in painting, and what they're saying is if the light's warm, the shadows will be cool, and if the light is cool, the shadows will be warm. And this is actually very inaccurate. And I think where this came from is when the Impressionists first went outdoors and started painting everything outdoors. So I've got this absolutely exquisite painting by Monet of a winter scene, and sure enough, what we have here are warm lights and cool shadows, just like the old proverb says. But in reality, that's not really what we're seeing as warm light, cool shadows. What we're really seeing is two light sources outside. Sort of like we have two light bulbs turned on, a warm one and a cool one. The sun represents the warm light, which dominates, of course, because it's the sun, and then the mass of the blue sky represents a secondary light source, a cool light. Sort of like if you had a north-facing studio, your windows would be cool, and all the light coming into your studio would be cool. A south-facing studio would have the sunlight coming in, and your studio light would be very warm, at least till noon when the sun was overhead, and then the blue skies would show through. So what you're really seeing here in the shadows is the sunlight's not getting through, but the secondary light source, which is the sky, is getting through. Okay, so really, if you wanted to know what the shadow color was, that would be the color underneath rocks and underneath other things where the sunlight doesn't hit it, and neither does the secondary light source. So let's go ahead and look at these. I've taken the liberty of shooting some pictures with a digital camera. This is shot with a cool light. So this is a cool light, and this is the shadow. And I want you to see cool light really translates to a cool shadow. Hang on a second. I might have. Let's go. There we go. Sorry about that. Anyway, here we go. Here is a cool light. This is a north daylight balanced bulb, and here's the shadow color, right? The next is warm light, and here's the shadow color. And then lastly, I mimicked what we see with the Impressionists, which is warm light and cool shadows on that one. Now let's see how all that looks put together. So we'll start here with, and here's what you see. First, and let's just zoom in on this, and you will see that cool light, cool shadows, warm light, cool, warm shadows. Zoom in even further, you can really start to see the difference between, see how much cooler this is than that? So in reality, if you have cool light, you're going to have cool shadows. Warm light's going to give you warm shadows. Hi, Dan here again. I wanted to make sure that everyone was clear about a couple things. I've had a few questions. First off, Monet did nothing wrong. It's exactly the way light does behave when you're outdoors. My point was, in his painting that you see here, there are two light sources. One's the blue sky, and the second light source is the sun. And that's where I say that this all came from, this warm light, cool shadows, or cool light, warm shadows indoors, just because I want to make sure there's no mistake about that. Monet did an absolutely wonderful job on his painting. But when you get indoors, especially when you're painting still lifes or models, there's normally one light source. And my point is, warm light source will give you warm shadows, and a cool light source will still give you cooler shadows, cooler than what they would be if the light sources were reversed. Now, you might have with cool light, your shadows might be warmer than the cool light, but they're still going to be cool. And shadow color comes from a bunch of things. One, it comes from partially the object that's being lit. I showed you with the white paper towels to show you as much color as possible. But if it was red, the shadows would still be red, but they would be influenced by the cool light or warm light, whatever was actually hitting the object. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that. And the same thing would be if it was any color. Okay? And the reason you want this is important is, for example, if you had something that was a warm light and you put a cool shadow on it, that very often makes your paintings look dirty, especially if you're painting human flesh. That's very common problem, is people make warm lights for that and cool shadows. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was totally clear on that, and it is very important, so I want to be as clear as possible, and that's what happens when you take a 30-minute lecture and cram it into a 5-minute video. But that's the way it is. So if you have any questions about it, feel free to leave it in the comments or email me or visit me on Facebook on my tips page, which is Oil Painting Tips and Tricks. And there's an open discussion board where I encourage you to ask questions and I will answer them.